Welcome to Devoted to a Soldier Resource panel where the theme tonight is Veterans Group. And with me, I have Miss Tawnya and Mr. Mike. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for
We were
having
having a little fight about Michigan State, Indiana. I don't know. I stayed out of it. The whole thing almost blew up in our faces before we started.
Yeah. It almost ended before it started.
That is right. And oh, my favorite guy is already on and watching. Andrew in Tennessee. How are you? He is a friend. He just fuels and fires me up. He's the best guy ever. I'll introduce you later. You can look at the comments later. But let's get right into it. Tell the world a little bit about who you are. Tawnya, you can go first. Ladies first. Just of who you are.
Not the agreement. All right, my name is Tawnya, and I am the president and CEO of Together for the Good, Incorporated, based out here in Michigan. And what our organization specifically does is we focus our attention around the family dynamic side of our military, first responders, firefighters, and police officers. So our philosophy is if the veteran or the police officer and firefighter are getting themselves whole and they come back into the same chaos at home, we're missing the link in the chain. So it's not going to flow correctly. Then he regresses back to whatever situation he was in to, have to start all over again. So we focus and we do it in a holistic approach. So it's low stimulation because of obviously of brain injuries and PTSD, all the extra noise, and just causes more confusion and more pain. So we're trying the low stimulation and like the calming colors, and we're trying that approach.
Love it. We got just the family side of things. And Mike, who is Mike? Who is Mike?
Sure. Yeah. No. It's funny. It's 'cause I come from an athletic background, a sports football family, and I went from being a college football player, eventually transitioning into an endurance athlete, so totally unrelated. And then as I've kind of gone through life, just my passion between athletics and my friendships with people in the military helped me get into the creation of what's known as the 1 Mile Leadership Project, and we can dig into that as well. But I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm a brother. I'm all those categories.
He's a dude.
Yeah,
Andrew's saying that you guys, you have a lot of friends in common, mostly the Reverend and girls. So you probably have crossed Andrew's path, Mike. That's just a side note.
Yeah.
Just a side note. But I'd like to dig right into it because we only have a little bit of time, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. But really, I want to really know why 1 mile and why Together for the Good, because you can have all of these things or see this or be in this situation, married to an active military, Tawnya, I know you were married to now a veteran, but why do anything other than know them and be in the family? What made this all happen?
Sure. I mean, I'll go first, Tawnya. So I'm a co-founder of 1 Mile, and how 1 Mile started was the framework, the network that I realized that military personnel and athletes have in common. In fact, in 1 Mile, which is 500 and some members, even when you look at the athletes, you peel them back a couple layers and you realize a lot of them are former servicemen, former servicewomen. They are veterans. They may now be better known as athletes, but their background is connected to the service. And I also realized that a lot of us think very similarly. We love structure, we love goals, we love mission. We like that kind of structure. And what I learned through life was that admiration that you see, where the athletes, whether they're pro football players, just have this incredible admiration for the military and so much respect for them. But then when you talk to the guys in the military, they're in awe when the major league baseball players or football players are walking around and coming around. So I realized this admiration that both sides had for each other. And I also realized there was no melting pot for a connection. So that kind of, a short summary on how we started looking at 1 mile was not to be a group of athletes, but not to be another veterans club. I mean, that lane is full and there's a lot of them. So let's try to bring both worlds, the best of both worlds, together. And it has exploded for us. It's truly been amazing. And again, that leads into the whole idea of, how one side can help the other. And how I always talk about, you peel us all back a couple layers. Our paths are different, but so many of us are very, very similar in the way that we think, we feel, we process. So somebody that went the route of the military and somebody that went the route of, maybe an ultra runner, probably very similar at the core, just two different life paths. That's simple.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very cool how that things happen. It's very cool when you've found something that's missing, how it explodes.
Yes.
Like you don't even know that there was a need, and then all of a sudden you just follow your truth and like, what? It opens up. So like Tawnya, yours is a little different. And that's why I have obviously both sides of the spectrum here tonight, but why Together for the Good?
So it all started with my journey as a military spouse. He served in Operation Desert Storm, and he was over in Fort Hood, Texas, and they were just getting back on base, and he got hit upside the head with a 2x4, cracked his skull open, 26 staples to close his head up. And there was no follow-up. There was no x-rays, no nothing. They stapled him up and then sent him back to active duty. And it was about a year, almost a year, he started showing signs of brain injury. He was having a violent outburst. He wasn't listening to authority, started getting demoted rank because he would show up to formation without his uniform pressed. And it was, it was a hard thing for him to go through, because I feel like it was a lack of education. Like if people were more aware of the education behind it, then they would have known what was going on. But so ultimately, the journey started with me being his advocate, because he was just progressively getting worse. We'd be out in public and he would think people were talking about him. He would hear the whispers, and he would be so disrespectful to elderly individuals that it was embarrassing. It was embarrassing to be in public, and it took a huge toll on us. So me being a nurse at the VA, I started asking around, like, hey, this doesn't sound right. This isn't right. And mind you, we're 12 years out of discharge from the military now. So 12 years of no kind of diagnosis, nothing. So here we are, and I'm asking the doctors and nurses about what was going on. And they said, it sounds like he has a brain injury. So shipped his butt down to Battle Creek, and within 24 hours after the test was done, he came back and he has 5 3-centimeter-inch calcified blood clots in his brain. Yeah.
Well, that is definitely a motivation to not just get your house in order, but to be there, because that impacted you in such a way, to be there for others, so that as a resource, so that they're not kind of going through the same thing. Have you guys found re-engagement into groups? Have you found that sometimes, I'm speaking just for veterans, I know it's for everything, but talking just on a veteran side of it, that maybe they'll want to engage, but then they'll pull back because of, I don't know, maybe, communication issues, or I don't know, something along their lines, or, they wanted the camaraderie, but then they missed the camaraderie that they were used to. It's different. So have you seen that within your groups at all, or?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things with us. We're still relatively new, when a young group.
Yeah.
So some of those things you probably aren't seeing maybe as much as Tawnya has seen it. But I think what happens a little bit, the veterans get pulled in so many different directions, right? They're getting pulled on their heartstrings. They're getting pulled on their civilian responsibilities. They're getting pulled, unfortunately, by their own personal demons, whether it's PTSD or, in our group, we have a lot of people that have suffered through either addiction, alcoholism, and some of those things that can kind of creep into these groups, these individuals. And so that too is pulling hard on them. In a quick story, some of the amputees in our group talk about, when at least when you go through the process of losing something, an arm, a leg, what have you, it's visual to everybody. Everybody sees it. Everybody can treat it. When you go through the process of what we call the silent suffering, and that, Tawnya, as you talk about, the PTSD side, or maybe it's the overt or covert addictions. Sometimes we think we know and we don't know. That's also where it gets tricky. We're, as a group, we're working hard on that. We've got some action steps in place to kind of help that group specifically. And try to engage. It goes back to the engagement side of it. How do you get them engaged? Some are happy to engage, but then getting them to share their story, which is a big part of 1 mile, that can also get a little complicated. Because again, you've got to put your sword down, and for a lot of veterans, putting your sword down is a big ask.
It's that vulnerability. It's that vulnerability.
Absolutely. Now the beauty of it is, in 1 mile is a closed group. So the beauty of it is, when you see others putting their sword down, you're more willing to put yours down. And when you see other people that are willing to talk about their hurt and their pain and their struggle, they're willing to talk about theirs. So that's a little bit of how we're trying to engage. It's also a big reason right now why 1 mile is closed, is to give it a little bit of confidentiality, if you can say that, and to give it a little bit of the willingness to say, guys, come in here. But from an athletic standpoint, leave your trophies and your medals behind, but put your sword down and come in and be you.
Yeah, I have to mention Brian's watching, great guy, and I knew if he turned on, he'd relate to your story, Tawnya, because he was like, "Is she telling her story or my story?" Like I knew that. How about for you, Tawnya? Because you were the wife, seeing it where not necessarily your husband was recognizing it or wanting to engage or wanting to get help, and you were there. So, kind of, how do you deal with that and help others, or deal with it on your own?
So it's a hard process. This has been 15 years of mental, physical, and emotional abuse, and it takes a toll on a person. And it's a lot of, he doesn't know what he's doing, because he was just diagnosed with early onset dementia. So you have brain injury, you have PTSD, and now you have early onset dementia. So you have a cottage cheese brain right now, and you don't know how to function. And that's the sad part, because like you get all the brunt of everything that's coming in, and he doesn't know what he's doing. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are going through this in silence and don't understand what to look for, what to think, what to say. And that's that's the driving force, is like, I did 15 years in silence, 15 years. Yeah. And it's so sad that I didn't realize 15 years ago that this was not good. So
right.
Yeah, like it's a hard process. This other side of what does it look like, on the other side of being the caregiver, the wife, the everything. And now I don't know, it's a hard role.
Yeah. Do you think, actually, as you were talking, do you think if there was, or you do the services with the family and things like that, if there was more of a connection between what you do and kind of what Mike does, some sort of collaboration of groups like that, where sometimes the person doesn't want the advice, like, my kids, I can tell them what to do, and they're like, put their fingers in, they never heard it, but someone else says it and it's genius. And you're like, what? So if there was some way, I don't know, as I'm sitting here listening to it, thinking of like, gosh, some way of having like those groups along with working with nonprofits or just different organizations that help on the family side might be a way to break down where they can look back and be like, oh my God, that's me. Yeah. They might not ever recognize it out loud, but they might reach out.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I think we're all open and we're all vulnerable to adding to stories. It's no different than your panel, right? People are more willing to add to the story once the story is started.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier for us to go, oh my, I've got a story for you, or oh, we're talking about me. But it's easier to join the story than it is to start that story. So I absolutely agree, Tawnya. And some of the things we're trying to do is take some of our athletes and members and military members, do some action that can then lead to us raising some funds that then we can pass on to some of the grassroots charities who are helping individuals. Because we realize as an organization, we're not ready to vet through, who should and who shouldn't.
It's hard.
It is. I'm sure it is. So we're trying to say, we've got some firepower, guys. Let's get noticed. Let's make some awareness. Let's do some big things and try to raise some money. And then, in a sense, hand that over to the people that are at the grassroots that, like you are, that, they're just living it and grinding through it and really trying to make a difference. And back to Dana, your point, I mean, absolutely. I would love to, if we can collaborate and work on things, we can be an inspiration. Sometimes people, especially probably a little bit more on the male side, they appreciate that hierarchy of being noticed, of, acknowledgement.
I finally have a voice. I finally have a voice, because you got to remember, they've been suppressed for so long. They had to listen to commands and they couldn't give the commands. Yeah. So it's the opening up, it's the vulnerability, because you've been trained not to be vulnerable. Now you're taking them back into civilian life and saying, here, now you go be vulnerable again. It's not going to happen.
So how do you take those, those skills that they have those leadership skills, even if they're taking on, taking orders, they're giving them too, right? You organically develop these leadership skills. What are some strategies to implement them through these groups and things like that nowadays as a veteran?
I mean, from my side, it's still, again, being young. It's a lot of my things are more hypothetical. I mean, Tanya's living it, has lived it, so she understands probably the reality side, the real side of it. Where we try to look at, again, getting some of these people that have tremendous skill sets, and then those skill sets a lot of times can fall into organizational skill sets, structured skill sets, discipline skill sets. They're very good at that, right? They're very methodical, and a lot of them become very methodically thinking, good or bad. And so we're trying to find opportunities for them to get in. That's why you also see a lot of our athletes, again, our veterans, because they go from service world to civilian world, and they're looking at, okay, how do I now apply what I desperately need? Structure, discipline, all that feeling. And I think when you pull that away, sometimes it's really when they get lost, because then they don't have those boundaries. They don't have that pain that goes along with pleasure. They don't have certain things. And I think they have a sense, and again, I'm speculating, but a sense of being lost.
Yeah, it's a loss of identity. It is. Yeah. Like the only way I can explain it, and this has been told to me, and the only way that I explained, or how they explained it, is like grieving. You have to go through the grieving process of the old self in order to come out a different person. So if you're not willing to literally go through the grieving process and feel the pain and feel the anger and feel the grief and feel everything with it, yeah. the counseling and all that, it's not going to make a difference. Like, you have to want it, yeah, deep in your soul. Like, that's how bad you want to be able to just live as normal as can be. It's hard.
Yeah.
It is hard.
Brian made a good point. He said it hurts to hear others, let alone tell your own experiences. So that makes me think that you have to, it's a stage process, right? Not for everybody, but I'm just saying that first you got to be able to hear, because that's going to pull in. And then once you get familiar and comfortable listening and kind of watching from the sidelines, then you can kind of stick your foot in and express, and then maybe from that becomes those leadership skills.
Well, and Danny, a lot of us are hard. I mean, a lot of us, we're all hardwired to begin with, right? So some of the traits are just that. They're going to be characteristic of traits, no matter what your background is. So there's absolutely that. You've got to kind of go through that process, and Tawnya, like you talked about, you've got to go through that. Shedding the old skin and developing the new skin. And it is tough because, I mean, and again, bear with me because I haven't served, but when your identity has been one thing, and where I see it, good example, I see it with a lot of former players, NFL players, for instance. Their identity is who they were, but they're probably done with their career in their 20s. They're very short career, maybe it's a 4-year career, and all of a sudden they're out going, I'm not that guy, really. Well, I am that guy, but I'm not that guy. And that you see the same kind of struggles. Again, it goes back to the 1 Mile Project. You see the same kind of struggles of trying to figure out who you are and what's your identity and how you turn in what you were into who you are with equal strength and equal drive.
Yeah. Mm. And the family, of course, see, it goes so fast. I look over, it's 6:21 already. But the family aspect, you both must see it. Now, maybe Tawnya more because that's her focus, but you both have to see it in your version of how the family comes into play. And can you just talk about that a little bit? Because I learned through stories. That is how I relate. So that is how, if you can expand on that. How does the family come into play? How do you get?
Okay. So how, okay, I just gotta.
I asked a very multi-level.
That was very deep. That was very deep.
I know. So I was like,
just answer any way you want.
Okay. A very short sentence. No,
okay. Family first. Okay. So the family dynamic is your base, right? So they need a firm foundation in order for them to be sustainable, to get back to, it's like retraining you all over again. So you leave for the military when you're 18 years old, we'll say 18, right? You leave, you are still young, you're still impressionable, and that is like the best way to train somebody is when you're all the above. Now you take 20 years of service, now you come back, and that's 20 years you've been away from pretty much civilian, like society, besides your little gaps coming home. So your family's changed, your life has changed, everything has changed, and you have no foundation. So you have to start with the family. And my belief is you need to start with the family while they're in service. So this is where education starts on base, where families need to start getting involved and start going through these steps of becoming a community together, like like educating each other on, hey, there's possibilities that this could happen coming home, and you have to look out for these signs. And it's the family foundation is what's key.
What the one good thing, there's many good things about social media, and there's many that aren't, but one of the ones that I've seen that's positive that's coming out are the military wives that are putting together things exactly like you're talking about, instead of the negative side of it where it's all like broken up and young wives and young mothers being left alone while their husbands are on deployment. The women are starting to actually come together and be a base together to receive their husbands and actually educate the other, maybe younger ones or the ones don't have it.
It's our responsibility. It's our responsibility as the older generation to teach them this is how you have to start looking out for things. This is what you need to do. Start educating yourselves, because everything that we're teaching, we didn't have that privilege. We had to learn it the hard way. So I had to navigate the system by myself. I didn't have advocates out there fighting for me. I didn't have the ability to go down to the VA and get right in and get all my materials that I need. Like there was none of this. So they're being literally blessed with the older generation with all the information that you could possibly learn and essentially save a life. Like you notice it faster and then get treatment faster and it helps.
And there are really good wives out there like yourself. And I have to, Mike, I want you to respond, but I have to say Brian said, because I know Brian's wife and he said, Tawnya, preach it on our behalf. My poor wife has suffered with me like a champ. Like
I salute her.
Yeah. Like
to the other.
They're like this, but it does that. And what about you, Mike, on the other side, right? So Tanya's kind of in there while they're active, right? You know, and veteran, but you're seeing it more on, I don't want to say a social side, but maybe on a more of a social side, but the family must come into play being that backbone.
Well, I mean, yeah, and it does. And, you know, you made the good point, and that was just the whole social media. I mean, you know, when I first got on social media, I was almost going to get off as quick as I got on it. It just kind of like, okay, this is not where I need to spend my time. But as I learn more and I realize that the groups that you're talking about, that there are opportunities and there are places now to have these conversations, you know, to have these kind of free flowing conversations, whether it's for the husband, the wife, the male, the female, just a place to go now, you're excited to get some information, to share some ideas. Again, that's what we try to do. You know, we're all about sharing stories. We're all about inspiring. We're all about highlighting, you know, what people are doing. But I spend a lot of time in my group highlighting what they've done, because I want them to continually be proud of who they are and maybe what they look like when they were 20. And I'm sure to them it might be comical, but to us, it puts everything back into perspective. So that's the power of the social media side. And you know, we do it every single day. We're trying to highlight new members, and we're also trying to highlight old members, and then we're also trying to tell stories and share stories in between. And again, a lot of those stories are about struggle, overcoming struggles, but some of them are also just a blessing of stay true, stay true to yourself, stay true to your family, and it's a big part of what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Mike, when I was asking this question, I want to say this quote, and because it was really good, and I don't even know if you know what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it. So you gave this quote to me when I was asking, in our conversation, it says, struggles and demons are not selective. They look for the opportunity to isolate you.
Yeah.
And I was like,
and it's so,
that spoke, and that right there is why I am so thankful for both of you in your way, putting it, you know, because you could sit back and do nothing. You could sit back and you could be, you know, I forget what kind of athlete you called yourself. I just went blank there for a second, but endurance athlete, and you have your jam on. And Tawnya, you could have like figured it out and be on your merry way. But the fact that you thought outside yourself, and because of that quote like just solidified it all to me.
It is. And it is, you know, Tawnya mentioned it as well. It's the silent side. That is the deadly side. That is when things are going wrong. You know, when we're out, we're talking, we're crying, we're laughing. It's the demons take hold when you're in silence. And anybody that's been there, and I've been there, you know, you start sliding deeper and deeper into that darkness. You know, they are trying to get you alone. They're trying to get you in that back alley, because then they know they have a chance.
Yeah.
And if you can stay out of those back alleys and you can stay out in the sunshine, you can stay out with people and laugh and cry. There's a whole lot of hope there.
Yeah. And when we're wrapping up, I want to give you a moment to just say some last things, whether it's where to find you or something inspirational or meaningful or anything that's on your heart, basically. I want to give you this moment.
Tawnya, go ahead.
You can always reach us at togetherforthegood.org. And we have many, many resources that we work with. We work with Psych Armor, Psych Hub. We get a lot of our videos and education pieces from other organizations. So it's a collaboration on huge proportions. But I just want to start having that uncomfortable conversation and start addressing the mental health and the PTSD and the suicide, because I do have PTSD. I do. And it's from trauma, and we suffer too. We suffer too, but we have to be able to have that uncomfortable conversation and say something's wrong. So I start asking people to just start having that uncomfortable conversation and educating yourself.
Exactly. You know, and you know, to add to that, you know, one of the videos we did recently was, you know, called "Make the Call," and it's more about making the call to friends, making the call to the loved ones, checking in. You know, it's kind of that other side of that. Finding more information about us, you can go to the onemileproject.com, and or you can find us on Facebook. If anybody's interested in, you know, joining, reach out to me, and I'll get you the details. And Tawnya, I hope in the future you and I can work on some things together.
Oh, absolutely. I'm always open to work with everybody.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer in everything you're talking about. And again, that suffering is a big part of not only my own personal life, but also about 1 Mile. So whether it's PTSD or depression or anxiety or suicidal thoughts, addiction, it's important to me.
Fantastic. Absolutely. Yes.
Well, you guys are.
Yeah.
I love you both. Thank you for taking the time to share your heart and what you do and why you do it with us, and give some really good. I love it because it's like you get some really good nuggets. You can walk away and you can sit on it and you can apply it, whether you're in the military, you're not in the military, you know somebody. It's just good stuff. So.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And to everybody out there watching, I hope you join our table next time.
Thank you, Dan, for the platform.
You are so welcome.